Hello, and welcome to our next presentation. On behalf of the MIT CDOIQ Virtual Symposium, we would like to thank all of our sponsors who have continued to support the symposium during this very challenging year. Before we thank our partners, we'd like to ask that sometime during the symposium's breaks that you visit our partners' virtual booths. You can also visit the Content Hub on the MIT CDOIQ website for some great partner resources. We'd like to thank the following partners: Deloitte, Informatica, Privacy Analytics, CDOIQ, Fusion Alliance, KPMG, Sandal Consultants, Tamer, Elation, Ali Data, Big ID, Boomi, Caserta, Citizen, Data Kitchen, Garage, Wakira, Pylog, Click, ThoughtSpot, Eckerson, Global IDs, Snowflake, Starburst. And as I said, please make every effort to visit our partners, use the virtual passport, because without them and our partner support, the symposium could not be held. Thank you.
Hello and welcome everyone. We hope that you are enjoying the conference so far. We are now going to move on with session 6A, and I'm pleased to announce our next speaker, Joe Caserta. Joe is an internationally recognized public speaker, entrepreneur, technologist, and founding president of Caserta. Today, he's going to be talking about operationalizing data governance. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Joe.
Hi, everybody. I hope everybody could see me and see my screen. Yes? No.
Hi, Joe. We can't see your screen just yet.
Oh, it doesn't need to share.
There we go. Perfect.
All right. How's that look? All right. So let's talk about operationalizing data governance. Hi, everybody. Welcome to MIT. Since it's 4:30 and you've been through the whole day, I'm sure you've heard happy COVID, probably half a dozen times at least already. But interesting times, and we will talk a little bit about, I'm actually going to try to avoid talking about COVID. I'm sure it's played out by now, but I do want to talk a little bit about this image of the brain. So, you know, when we talk about data governance is an interesting part of data because it really requires human beings and digital to merge together. You know, what we want to do is we want to take policies and procedures and principles about corporate environment and regulatory compliance that's made by humans and apply it towards things that are digital and enforce it through things that are digital. And that's what really we're going to talk a little bit about when we talk about operationalizing it. We're not talking about how to write policies, procedures. We will talk a little bit about the organization, but we're going to really focus on how to get it done. Like that's, you know, especially get it done in the contemporary world where, you know, you're dealing with data that you don't control and on infrastructure that you don't control and figuring out how to govern it under these circumstances. So, so let's dive into it a little bit. When we talk about data, there's many different aspects of data. We talk about, you know, using data for business strategy, using data with machine learning and advanced analytics, how to visualize data, how to build data pipelines and move data around from one place to another, putting data out on the cloud, architecting data, putting it in databases, engineering it for advanced analytics, putting it in data lakes, artificial intelligence to try to influence buyer behavior. And then finally is how to monetize you know, the data that you have, either internally or externally. And lots of these topics are interesting and fun to talk about and fun to implement. The one thread, that common thread that goes through all of these different approaches to using data is data governance. So without data governance, none of these things could really be possible. at least not legally, right? So let's just try to define data governance. So data governance, a framework, an approach for assigning and enforcing rights and authorities to ensure enterprise is and its regulatory constituents and stakeholders have secure, reliable, consistent, accurate, and timely information. That is the goal. And that's really what we're going to talk about is the enforcing part, right? Not so much the assigning part. So when we talk about governance, let's talk about how it was born, right? So governance was born because people created businesses. And who creates a business? Somebody who's really good at a thing starts to produce that thing and then sell it, whether it's a service or a product or whatever, right? Or, newspapers or, shoes, doesn't matter. Eventually you get big enough in your business where you need to have systems to help support you and have other people to help support you. And when you have other people and other systems working, you put yourself at risk. And there's all different types of risk, right? So what do we do from a corporate enterprise governance aspect? We create a board of directors. The board of directors comes up with the rules, right? And then we have enterprise risk that takes all of the different moving parts of a business and assesses the risk and tries to mitigate all of the risk from all the moving parts. And then we have external regulatory organizations that mandate you to comply with their regulatory rules. And then when we want to actually use that data, right, there's a whole other list of governance policies, GDPR, CCPA, California, COPPA, Child Online Protection, and out of all of this, at the corporate level, over the course of a couple of centuries, a bunch of parts of the organization has been born, right? So now every organization pretty much has a legal counsel, regulatory compliance, maybe a chief compliance officer, somebody responsible for coming up with policies and procedures, monitoring to make sure that everything's okay, whether it's internally monitored or externally monitored. And the key thing is to have transparency in everything you're doing and accountability to make sure things are being done right. And, if you think about every one of these different parts of rules and regulations and viewpoints, they all basically mandate that you do three basic things, right? You have to be able to do what you say, you have to say what you do, and you have to be able to prove it. And regardless of what part of compliance you're trying to do those three things and you're pretty safe. So let's take those three things and we'll try to apply it towards data governance, right? Because, the three-legged stool of governance is your corporate governance, which we just talked about. IT governance is the systems, and then the data governance is the data within the systems within the corporation. And all of this is required as separate initiatives that all work together, ultimately to mitigate, enterprise risk and to manage your enterprise risk. In 2020, maybe because it's COVID, maybe not, I don't know, but ERM, enterprise risk management, is probably one of the leading reasons why Caserta is being called lately. Enterprise risk managers are really focused on data governance this year for whatever reason. And I think it's because we're starting to realize that, you can have great corporate governance. IT governance has been around for a while, but really when you can't go into the next room and talk to somebody, the only way to really communicate is through your data. And the only way to communicate when you can't have your customers walk into your store and up to your counter, the only way to communicate is through your data. So data governance is really on the forefront right now, and probably caused by COVID, but it's been kind of growing area of concern for years, which is why MIT created this CDOIQ 7 years now, 8 years now. So the red bar on the bottom is management and assurance processes, and that's what we're going to start diving into. So when we are managing a process, let's first define the process. So I break data governance just to remove the ambiguity, because data governance is probably the most ambiguous words in, besides maybe data lake, but data governance is probably one of the most ambiguous terms in the data world, data industry. So let's start. So data, or the organization around data governance. So Enterprise Data Council, data stewardship, we're going to talk a little bit about that, what they do. How do you deal with that currently? Metadata management, harnessing data, storing metadata, disseminating metadata, sharing it with users, sharing it with other systems. That is all part of data governance. Privacy and security, identifying and controlling sensitive data. This gets into PII data, PHI data, PCI data, having strategic initiatives and techniques, physical techniques on how to secure your data, how to protect private data, especially on the public cloud. Data quality, monitoring, having a dynamic environment where as you deal with data defects for the first time, you can go in and update your data quality subsystem so that you can check and measure and improve that data as you're experiencing it. One of the goals that you may want in data governance. Business process integration. No longer is a data ecosystem made to create reports, right? The data ecosystem is to share data in real time with all of your applications, right? So having SLAs around that, source availability, really understanding what is the expectations and the policies and the frequency of data movement is very, very important nowadays. Master data management and information lifecycle management. Understanding from a governance perspective, how long do you have to keep your data? How long are you not allowed to keep your data? How do you archive your data? And how to be able to set up these policies systematically so that you don't have to think about it. You understand you can actually attach the policy to the data and set up rules where, if it's a 7-year life policy, after that, on that piece of data's 7th birthday, it will go off and it'll go be archived automatically without having any intervention. And all of these, across all of these, includes, some people, some processes, and some technologies. So let's start with the people part. So there's usually, 3 tiers of implementing or operationalizing governance. A data stewardship committee who acts on the requirements, comes up with the business rules. When there's data defects coming in, what do we do about it? How do we fix it? Should we fix it? Where do we fix it? All of that stuff. And then the data governance committees, that's what I call the traffic cops. So when there's defects, who are the stewards? This ultimately may be completely automated, but coming up with the prioritization when there's a backlog of data defects and they all need to be fixed. The committee has meetings regularly to say, okay, this is very, very, critical data, and this is not so critical data. So let's fix this critical data first. Once somebody decides it needs to be fixed, it goes to the stewardship. They come up with recommendations on how to fix it. And then that recommendation will go to the Enterprise Data Council for approval. The Enterprise Data Council, typically very, very high level, strategic. If you can get people from your board involved, amazing. But at the least, you should have a CIO, CFO, CDO, obviously, legal counsel, information security officer, and if you have a chief compliance officer should also be part of your enterprise data council. Now, if we look to the right, I created this image probably, I don't want to say 20 years ago, but a really long time ago. And the circles on the right used to say things like master data management, data quality assurance, you know, all of the things that how we used to define data before data started to be more used through public access. And now that data is used through public access, things change. So instead of saying, you know, data availability, now we have to make sure that we are interacting through the Enterprise Data Council with legal and compliance, making sure we really understand the CCPA law and we know how to implement the CCPA law from a technical perspective so that we are safe, that we are protected, and our customers are protected. Policies and procedures being completely transparent, having controls and mechanisms, and the architecture of all of your data. Accountability, all of this and all of these goals need to be achieved by, you know, the data stewardship and the Enterprise Data Council committees. How do we do that? So first thing we do typically is we break it up, right? And in order, you know, if anything is too complicated, just start functionally decomposing it, and then it becomes all of the functional decomposed portions start to become simple. And if it's not simple yet, decompose it again until it's simple. And if it's not simple yet, decompose it again. And then so what I did is I broke this, you know, the data governance journey into 5 basic things. And so the first thing is get a set of use cases, you know, things like, you know, as a data scientist, I need to input, you know, and just a use case. What is a use case? Use case is basically 3 components. As an X, as this type of person, I need to, Y, perform a task so that I can, Z, right, achieve a goal. And so come up with, as a person, I need to perform a task so I can achieve a goal. So who are the people that are in your organization? What tasks do they perform? And what goals are they achieving? And if you make a list, right, you will have thousands of these things, right? But really what you want to do is you want to focus in on, you know, what is important to the business. So things like, as a data scientist, I need to ingest third-party data so that I can predict mergers and acquisitions. As a chief marketing officer, I need to have clean and consolidated customer data so that I can optimize my campaigns, right? And just come through those. You can do the thousands of them. It's a great opportunity for crowdsourcing. Come up with a tool that collects all of the use cases of your organization and then prioritize them. Once you do that, then you could start thinking about, okay, in order to achieve these goals, what pieces of data do I need? And of those pieces of data, what systems would I get them from? Are they internal? Are they external? Are they clean? Are they dirty? Are they secure? Are they not secure? Are they internal? Are they on the cloud? Are they on-prem? Figure out what of those data elements are super high value, which of those data elements are not terribly high value. And then figure out, okay, now I know what I want to be able to do. Now I know what I have. Now you need to, you know, fill in that gap, right? And now we think about, you know, things like, you know, I'll just throw out a most obvious data governance tool, Calibra, right? Maybe I need Calibra, but maybe I need something that's more tightly integrated with my ETL, because what I'm finding is when I look at my data ecosystem, the data does not look anything like the way I need it prepared for my use cases. In that case, I probably want a data governance system that's more tightly coupled to a data transformation system, right? So maybe like Talend or Informatica or something, right? So once you do that, right, then you're assessing what tools do you need, what technologies do you need. You make sure that the gap between what you have and what you need is filled. And then you figure out, how do I integrate all of these things that I just came up with the existing infrastructure and the existing policies and procedures and people that are within the organization, right? So system integration, people integration. And once you do that, then you have to now go talk to the people and say, hey, I am about to turn your world upside down, and let's talk about that, right? And that is change management. And that is probably the most demanding, challenging part of operationalizing data governance over all the other things combined, right? So we're going to talk about that specifically. So how do you handle change management for data governance? First thing we have to do is we have to figure out what needs to change, right? When you look at your organization, you may have some data governance already done. You may have some aspects of your business that are not fully governed, but the change may not be that impactful. And then you may have some parts of your organization where implementing data governance is going to completely disrupt the organization, right? So you need to really define what it is you're doing, prepare the people for what is going to happen to them, come up with a communication plan. And in this case, redundancy is really, never worry about telling people the same thing too many times, because, you know, for data folks like us, you know, we do this all day, every day. It's like kind of old hat. It's a little bit even boring sometimes, right? But for a business person who's not from the data world, you are telling them new information that they've never experienced. So they will need to hear it repeated a few times, right, before they really understand what is about to happen to them. So, so figure out what does that communication look like, come up with a strategy really for communication. And then how do I embed it into the culture, right? How do I actually get people to change? And, you know, do you reward people? Do you, you know, what is your culture fear-based? Is it reward-based? Is it committee-based? Is it directive-based? And really understand that, right? And so looking at all of the different aspects of your culture and really measure what is your culture. Because if you try to implement a data governance strategy that does not fit your culture, you're just setting yourself up to fail. It will never work. There are some places where your culture may have to shift. In that case, the Enterprise Data Council is so important, you know, getting top-down direction to say that, you know, either, you know, the business as a whole needs to evolve or it's going to die, just like any other kind of evolution, right? You evolve or you die. It's not about the person, it's not about the people, it's about the business. And getting that direction that, you know, look, you know, one of these things, we used to be run internationally. Now we need to be run regionally because now we need to comply with all of the different state level regulatory requirements for data governance. Okay, that's a thing you have to deal with, right? So deal with it, come up with a communication strategy, come up with change management strategy, and you're going to be fine. So why does governance fail, right? Sounds easy. Generally it fails because so far the things that we talked about, doing it, you know, on purpose, right? With an intention based on use cases that drive the business, prioritized, that is really the key foundation of getting buy-in. Without buy-in, the data governance programs are going to struggle. It needs to be business driven. If it's a 100% IT driven initiative, it will likely fail. Nobody listens to IT, right? If you have a chief data governance organization already, you know, I used to take for granted after 8 years, I don't take for granted everybody at MIT CDO or CDOs, right? Some are aspiring CDOs, some want to work with CDOs, some are figuring out if they need to create a CDO position. But if you have a CDO, this is where it would really come in handy. And the reason why, the number one reason why data governance fails is because, you know, the business and IT just will not align. They have different goals and objectives, and the CDO If there's any job description of a CDO, aligning business and IT has to be at the top of that list. Okay, so now we want to actually execute. So understanding, what it is you're trying to build, what tools do you need, how well aligned is your business and your technology folks in order to execute, and then come up with a plan. And that plan usually takes a couple of stages. And it could be anywhere, like a small hedge fund, even though hedge funds are somewhat regulated. You can do a data governance strategy in probably 8 to 10 weeks. If you are a big bank, or a heavily regulated organization, international, probably you're looking at like 6 months, right? It really depends. It's a very, very wide spectrum, right? So, having an outside consulting firm can help, or having at least somebody internally who's been there, done that at least once would be a really great help. And if you notice, if you are not only just doing pure governance, but like reimagining what your enterprise analytics platform should look like, if you're doing that, if you are really focused on the analytics side of CDO world, you really can't do it without the governance. So you should always have a data governance swim lane running, starting a little bit before and running in parallel at least, and finishing up before your analytics platform is completely finished. So do your data governance, corporate alignment, do your enterprise reporting and analytics platform, and then you'll be ready to do self-service reporting. So that now frees up, the IT folks, the analytics folks, the data folks from getting out of the, governance business, the reporting business, and now you're really free to use your data to drive your business. And that usually means, doing continuous integration and continuous deployment back into your business applications, and have your business applications run on analytics rather than being reactive based on, human insight, working with your data to get the insight out of your analytics. And that's really the goal, right? The goal is once you can fully automate your data governance, then you can fully automate all of your data pipelines. Then now you can actually think about how you can generate new insights and easily integrate those insights with your business processes. So this is kind of how it looks. And this is, I introduced this concept of a data pyramid probably 14 years ago now. And it still applies 100%. We need to have an area, and so just to describe what this is, almost 100%, actually right now, 100% of our business is on the cloud. All of our clients are either on the cloud or moving to the cloud. So put a cloud around it. And the left-hand side is the pattern of usage for the data. And then the right-hand side is the governance that can be applied at this type of data store, if you will, right? So we have, ingestion data. So you're taking data from all your different systems and you're just setting it down for perpetuity in full fidelity as it came in. Data governance on that side, metadata of where it's coming from, the schemas, all of that is 100% automated. Information lifecycle management, how long I should keep it, should be known. And of course, the security is completely locked down. No human beings go into this area. The data lake and the data science, we'll talk about that together just for sake of time. And they are usually fairly integrated. So a data lake takes all of your ingested data and now starts to put some structure around it. Starts to do some integration, starts to build some data sets that make sense across different business areas. And this is where we can start applying data quality, data monitoring, more metadata, information security, maybe at the data set level, a data catalog so you can browse it and find it, and integration, right? And this is where we can start serving up data to consumers, to data scientists, to applications, to APIs. And then we have the Data Science Laboratory. The Data Science Laboratory is an ephemeral space where we can have infrastructure as code, spin up an environment, get data from the lake, get data from the warehouse as needed, and have either humans or machines generate new insights based on that data. And basically what you're doing in these data science laboratories is testing theories. And those theories may be applicable, may be useful, may be complete garbage. Either way, having a fully automated data governance lifecycle to generate that data science laboratory is critical. That is in 100% of our data ecosystems for all of our clients. And then if the insights are valuable, then we can take it out of that isolated ephemeral workspace and go through a more rigorous data governance lifecycle, either into the data lake for new data sets, into the data warehouse to share data in reporting, and of course the data warehouse is a fully governed, fully structured, some sort of database, either it's BigQuery or Snowflake or Synapse, or depending on what cloud you use, it doesn't matter. This process works exactly the same across all clouds. So if you don't have that, right? If you don't have the culture, and if you don't have the strategy, and if you don't have the organization, and if you don't have all of the different architectures that are required and the technologies that are required, then you may not be quite ready to be a fully mature data governance organization, right? So if you're interested, there are techniques to measure where you are in the ranking of your data governance maturity. So, so this is part actually of an offering that Caserta makes, but there are other companies that do this stuff too. It's a data and analytics maturity model where for each one of these dimensions, you can actually measure, on a 1 to 5, how optimized your organization is. For data governance in particular, you can think about asking yourself these questions, right? Do you have a data governance function, like an enterprise data governance function? Do you have a well-defined communication practice for all of your policies? Are all of your policies applied and understood? Can you proactively monitor and enforce all of your policies? Do you have a data stewardship committee? Do you have an enterprise data council committee? Is everything automated? I won't read all of them. I almost did, I'll stop myself. But basically all of these are pretty binary. Either you do it or you don't do it. And be honest with yourself. That's why it's usually good to have a third party do this for you, because they don't have a dog in the fight. They're just going to tell it the way it is. And then you can measure, measure where you are on this chain, depending on, how advanced you are for each of those different questions. And it's a very good tool to figure out, are you ready to operationalize your data governance, or do you need some maturity? And where exactly do you need the maturity? That's why all of those indicators, there's 200 indicators that we have, depending on who you use to do this. You may have a different set of indicators. And then, so we'll give you a score, and then you can have a roadmap on and figure out what do you need to do in order to achieve optimal data governance maturity to be able to operationalize all of your data governance needs. We have about 5 minutes left. So I want to talk a little bit about a video series that Caserta is offering. There's no charge, there's no commitment, but it is, I do recommend it. And if you want to try it before you set up a schedule for all of the other stuff, the first one in the series already passed. So August 13th, we gave our first kickoff and and instruction on data access, data privacy, and data sovereignty. And so we will be doing these roughly once every 2 weeks. They will be recorded, and then you can access them whenever you like. So you don't really have to be stick to the schedule, but you won't be able to see them, each one of these series, before each one of these dates. And the good news is you only have to register once, and then you have access to all of the series. If you're interested in signing up for that series, you can go to bit.ly/data-gov.now, or to make it even easier, just email datagovernance@caserta.com, and we'll give you a link to the registration page. And hopefully that was helpful. That's all I have for today. We have about 5 minutes.
There are a couple of questions.
Sure.
I don't think my camera can come up, but there's time probably to answer at least one of them.
Sure.
Is consistent struggle between business and IT about driving the data governance for the enterprise. Your comments?
It is the most challenging thing, right? Because it's the part that deals with people. Systems are easy. Data is easy, right? People are not so easy, right? Because one of two things is happening. Either you're asking someone to relinquish control, which nobody ever wants to do, or sometimes you're asking somebody who already has a full plate to take on more work, which nobody ever wants to do, right? So how do you fix that, right? That is a challenge. Some organizations, some of our clients create new roles. If it's that important, create a new role. Not only a chief data officer, but maybe a chief data governance officer. At a minimum, and those are pretty high level, right? At a minimum, even if you're not ready to like invest in that type of role, a data governance coordinator is someone who I find to be a really valuable addition to any organization. So what the data governance coordinator is, it's basically that traffic cop that I was talking about. So you will have to have data steward. You need somebody to take responsibility for the data and have accountability for the data. So at a high level, you do need to get business buy-in. So let's say you're a healthcare company, and you want to know the person who's in charge of claims is going to be accountable for having clean claims data. The person in charge of enrollments is going to be accountable, right? Well, do they actually do it? No, right? They have stewards that do it, right? But somebody needs to be accountable. And that coordinator is the one who is going to assign the tasks to the different stewards and hold them accountable, and be able to escalate it to the Enterprise Data Council when it doesn't get done. And I think that's the most, and also coming up with a reward system. So if you are asking a person to take a new piece of work, it needs to be in their goals and objectives, and they need to be rewarded somehow. Sometimes all it takes is acknowledgement that they've done, that they're doing it. It doesn't really take financial reward.
Yeah. And related to that, how do most of your clients respond to your inclusion of the notion and the steps you've laid out for change management?
For having a consultant do it versus internally, you mean?
Well, what's their reaction to there's this whole process for change management?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, because if you asked me the same question a year ago, I would say nobody cares. This year, it is the #1 priority. I can't tell you how many clients we have lately who says, we've figured out how to do the technical part, or we could hire commodity consultants to implement, something. But how do I get people to adopt this?
Right.
We are really struggling internally on doing that. Some of our clients say, we already built it. We already have a data lake. We have a data warehouse on the cloud. We have, a data science ecosystem, but we just can't get people to rally around it. What do we do?
Right.
And this change, it's all about change management. That is the #1 priority lately.
All right. Well, great. Well, we're going to wrap up on that note. Very nice. You've got a very comprehensive package that you offer.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, good. And I hope that folks will we'll contact you and visit you in the vendor room. Thanks very much for supporting the symposium.
My pleasure as always.
And we'll hand it off to Barry.
All right. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.